Hello everyone, Namaskar. Myself Deepak Gupta, logging in on this platform of College Dekho Learn on YouTube. And today we will take up a topic of financial decision making, capital structure decision making, that is net income approach. So this net income approach by Durand tries to relate that how a capital structure decision, the capital structure decision that deals primarily that what should be your financing structure, that is what should be your leverage position, and it tries to relate this capital structure decision, that is your financial structure, that is your leverage position with the cost of capital, with the cost of capital, and how does it affect the overall value of the firm, because we all understand that the value of the firm is the ultimate objective of every financial management decision, that is the maximization of the wealth. So we believe that as the market price of the share increases, market price of the share, each share multiplied by the number of equity shares will be equal to the value of the firm. So value of the firm is effectively the market price of the share in total. So what this approach tries to measure, that whether your choice of leverage, that is total structure में से total fund की requirement में से how much is equity and how much is debt, will that affect the cost of capital? We should say yes, but does that affect the value of the firm? The answer may be yes or it may be no. So the overall concept is whether the capital structure affects the value of the firm. Some will say it is yes, some will say it is no. When some people say it is yes, we say it is net income approach. But there are various theories which presumes that the capital structure decision does not affect the value of the firm. For example, we use the word net operating income approach, and we also have another approach known as Modi-Jilani Miller approach. So we will be taking up the NI approach in this session, and we will be taking up the other two approaches in the sessions to come in the coming days and the week. So before we move into this approaches scenario, we have to understand that all these approaches have certain basic assumptions. In addition to those basic assumptions, they will have certain in theory assumptions. So we will first take these basic assumptions and then we will come to those generalized assumptions of the theory specific. So the basic assumptions is, first of all, that there is no personal or corporate taxation. We have, why we are presuming this, because when we talk of taxation heavily shifts the decision in favor of debts, because there is always a tax saving on the interest paid on the debt. So that tilts the favor in favor of debt financing. So to take that in undue benefit out, we presume that there is no personal or corporate taxation. Secondly, we have two kind of fundings, fixed and variable. Variable funding source is the equity, and the fixed funding sources are the debt and the preference. But preference is having higher cost than the debt. So actually, there is nobody who is giving to ready to pay more with the same character of debt. That is why there should not be any in practical scenario no preference capital. So this has an assumption that there are only two kinds. There are only two kinds of sources. दो तरह के sources हैं सिर्फ, एक इक्विटी है और एक डेब्ट है. इक्विटी की कॉस्ट डिविडेंड है जिसे क्या बोला जाएगा, के ई, और डेब्ट की कॉस्ट के डी यानी कि इंटरेस्ट है. सो इट जस्टिफाइज that the overall cost of capital, that is the KO, known as the cost of capital. So the overall cost of capital KO will be the weighted average cost of the specific cost KE and the KD. So KO will be equal to WD KD plus WEKE, because there is no preference capital. So we will have this formula that KO will be equal to WDKD and WEKE. And also, in case of all equity firm, that is when there is no debt, this KE will be equal to KO because there is no leverage. So all equity firm is there is no debt. No debt का मतलब that is no levered firm, कोई fixed funding source के funding है ही नहीं. Third thing is, or the next assumption is that the EPS is equal to the DPS. That is, whatever is the earning per share is equal to the dividend per share. That is, the dividend payout ratio is 100%. It denotes that all profits, all earnings or the profits of the firm has been distributed, with no retentions, with no retained earnings. So we presume that there are no retained earnings. So whenever we have this formula, that is KE is equal to D upon P0, it can also be equal to E upon P0, or if we have a growing dividend where the formula was D1 upon P0 plus G. So here whatever is the D1, that must be equal to the E1. So we presume that all earnings are distributed as it is and they are equal to the dividend. So in addition to this, when we now come to the net income approach, so these are the generalized assumptions. Now, in addition to these, there are certain other assumptions that we will be discussing when we study the specific approaches. So when I come to the net income approach, what it justifies that whatever is the capital structure decision, it means because there are no preference capital, it all depends upon the size of the leverage. So if we say that the firm is having no leverage, it means no debt, all equity. And as the fund uses more debt, that is the leverage increases. So the size of leverage will affect the cost of capital. And as per the formula of the cost of capital, as per the formula of the overall cost of capital, as the leverage increases, that is the weight of debt increases, the overall cost of capital, that is KO, should go down. How we will show it, and will that affect the value of the firm? That is the question. So how that affect the value of the firm? So will that affect the value of the firm? The net income approach says that leverage through the cost of capital affects the value of the firm, and that is what we will justify keeping in mind the following assumptions. And that assumption is that because there will be only two costs, that is KD and KE, the first and foremost assumption is that KD will always be less than KE, irrespective of the leverage. तो leverage कितनी भी हो, irrespective of the leverage, KD will always be less than KE. Irrespective of the leverage, KD will always be less than KE. Second assumption is that KD and KE, they both will remain constant. KD and KE, they both will remain constant irrespective of the leverage. मीन्स लोन का साइज छोटा हो, लोन का साइज बड़ा हो, रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट यानी कि KD कांस्टेंट रहेगा, और सिर्फ लोन का साइज नहीं, KE विल आल्सो रिमेन कांस्टेंट. यानी कि अगर आप लोन ज़्यादा भी ले रहे हो लोन ज़्यादा लेने का मतलब क्या है? यू हैव अ हायर फिक्स लायबिलिटी टुवर्ड्स इंटरेस्ट, so it presumes that equity will be at a higher risk of not getting the dividend, so they should be asking more as dividend. That should increase the KE, but this theory assumes that irrespective of the leverage size, cost of equity remains constant and they will not be charging more, or we should say KE will not increase. So both KD and KE are presumed to be constant irrespective of the leverage. And if I show this on a graph and I show on the x-axis the leverage, and on the y-axis if I show the cost of funding, that is the cost of capital. So because KD is always less than the KE, so in this graph on y-axis KD will be lower than the KE. And secondly, because KD and KE they will both remain constant of the leverage, hence the graph of the KD and the graph of the KE they will be parallel not just to each other but also to the line of leverage on the x-axis. So this straight parallel lines denotes that even if the leverage increases, the KD and KE are remaining constant. So this parallel x-axis line graph of KD and KE justifies that both of them will remain constant irrespective of the size of the leverage. Third assumption, that is the operating profit, that is the EBIT. जो ऑपरेटिंग प्रॉफिट EBIT है, it is independent of capital structure, is independent of capital structure. ये ऑब्वियस सी बात है, ज़्यादा इन्वेस्टमेंट ज़्यादा प्रॉफिट, लेकिन उस इन्वेस्टमेंट के क्वांटम में क्या है, मतलब उसमें कितना डेब्ट है, कितना इक्विटी है, उससे EBIT पे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. So EBIT is proportionate to the amount of investment, not the proportion of the funding. So EBIT is independent of the capital structure. It means EBIT remains constant. EBIT remains constant. ठीक है, क्लियर है. But because EBIT remains constant, but more is the EBIT, that is more is the operating profit, more we expect the EPS to be. तो अगर EBIT ज़्यादा होगा तो अर्निंग पर शेयर ज़्यादा होगा, और अगर अर्निंग पर शेयर ज़्यादा होगा इट मीन्स the value of the firm, that is the earning per share, will increase. So the next assumption that can be that the value of the firm is directly proportional to this EBIT. So V is directly proportional. V, that is the value of the firm. Market price of the share will be directly proportional to the operating profit, that is the EBIT, which in itself is constant. Secondly, this V will be inversely proportional to the cost of the funding, that is the KO. Obviously, more is the cost of the capital, less will be the profits, and less should be the value of the firm. So V is directly proportional to the operating profit, that is EBIT, and inversely proportional to the overall cost of capital, that is KO. And hence we can say that V being proportionate to EBIT upon KO and presuming the constant K to be 1, we can say that V will be equal to EBIT divided by KO. So V will be equal to EBIT upon overall cost of capital, and this formula can be used for calculating the value of the firm under this model. ठीक. So what this theory net income approach implies? It implies that whenever the leverage increases, so as the leverage increases, this leverage increase denotes, क्या denote करता है? That is the size of the debt is increased, denotes increase in the size of debt. तो ये जो size of debt है, it is the weight of the debt, that is the WD, the weight of the debt increases. It means because KD and KE are constant, and further WD के बढ़ने का मतलब क्या है? The increase in WD denotes the weight of equity decreases. So the implication is that when we have this formula KO, overall cost of capital, is equal to WD KD plus WE. So what is happening here? That because the size of the debt, that is the leverage, is increasing, the overall proportion of the cheaper part in calculating the overall cost of capital is increasing. तो चीप पार्ट के प्रोपोर्शन के बढ़ने से KO will decrease. So we can say that because of the increase in the leverage, the effect of KD in calculating KO will increase, and that will cause KO to fall, and therefore value of the firm was equal to EBIT upon KO. और EBIT कांस्टेंट था और KO अगर कम होगा, so value of the firm will resultantly increase. So what we can say, that this fall in KO will cause value of the firm to increase. It means the net income approach summarizes, what it summarizes, that as the leverage increases, मतलब as the use of debt increases, the total cost of funding decreases, and because the EBIT is constant, therefore the overall value of the firm increases. It also acts oppositely. ये अपोजिट डायरेक्शन में भी एक्ट करता है. इसका मतलब अगर लीवरेज गिरेगी, यानी कि डेप्ट आप कम यूज करेंगे, देन द कॉस्ट ऑफ फंडिंग विल इंक्रीज, एंड कॉस्ट ऑफ फंडिंग के इंक्रीज होने से, बिकॉज EBIT कांस्टेंट है, वैल्यू ऑफ द फर्म डिक्रीज होनी शुरू हो जाएगी. सो इन बोथ वेज वी कैन से that leverage affects cost of capital, which affects value of the firm. So this theory, net income approach, clearly states that your capital structure affects the value of the firm in either ways, whether the leverage increases or whether the leverage decreases. It will affect the value of the firm indirectly. Leverage के बढ़ने से value of the firm बढ़ जाएगी. तो we should say दैट कैपिटल स्ट्रक्चर की जगह अगर मैं लीवरेज बोलूँगा तो लीवरेज जो है वो वैल्यू ऑफ द फर्म को डायरेक्टली अफेक्ट करती है, क्योंकि लीवरेज के बढ़ने से केओ कम हो जाती है और वैल्यू ऑफ द फर्म बढ़ जाती है। ठीक है, इसी बात को अगर मैं यहाँ ग्राफिकली शो करूँ जो हमने पहले बनाया था, तो अगर इस ग्राफ को आप नोटिस करेंगे तो जीरो लीवरेज पर, यानी कि जीरो लीवरेज का मतलब क्या हुआ, ऑल इक्विटी पर के डी होगा ही नहीं, तो दिस के ई विल बी इक्वल टू के ओ, एंड इफ देयर इज 100% leverage, this KD should be equal to KO, but that is not possible because there cannot be a case of 100% leverage. 100% leverage possible ही नहीं है, because a company must always have some equity so that there is a ownership pattern. So when we see from here that if the graph starts from zero leverage, so KE will be equal to KO, and as the leverage increases, the KO will be reducing. It will go down, but it will never touch the KD line. It will never not touch the KD line, because if it touches the KD line, it means KO has been equal to KD. It means it is 100% leverage, which is not possible. So graph should not be showing the KO line to touch the KD. So we can never have that possible. So this graph justifies the reduction of KO with increase in leverage, and with this formula V is equal to EBIT upon KO. As the KO is going down, value of the firm will definitely increase, justifying the claim of the Durand through the net income approach that the capital structure, that is the leverage, affects the cost of capital and hence the value of the firm. ठीक है, अपनी इस थ्योरेटिकल डिस्कशन को मैं एक छोटे से एग्जाम्पल से और आपको सपोर्ट कर देता हूँ कि लेट्स से टोटल फंड्स की रिक्वायरमेंट 10 लाख रुपीज है, और जो हमारा EBIT है, द EBIT इज से रुपीज 2 lakhs। ठीक है, KD is let's say 8% per annum and KE is let's say 10% per annum। तो अगर हमारे पास तीन केसेस हैं, पहले केस में 20% लीवरेज है, आई मीन टू से कि टोटल फंड्स में से 2 लाख रुपए के डेप्ट है, 8 लाख रुपए की इक्विटी है। दूसरे केस में 40% लीवरेज है, यानी कि आई मीन टू से 4 लाख का डेप्ट है और 6 lakhs की इक्विटी है। और थर्ड केस में आई मीन टू से 60% लीवरेज है, दैट इज 6 lakhs के डेप्ट है और 4 lakhs की इक्विटी है। इट मीन्स पहले वाले केस में अगर मैं KO निकालूंगा तो इट विल बी WD प्लस WE के फॉर्मूले से अगर हम यूज करेंगे तो फर्स्ट केस में द KO will be equal to 0.20 multiplied by 0.08 plus 0.08 is the weight multiplied by 0.10 KE. So that will be 0.016 plus 0.08, that will be 0.096, the KO will be 9.6%. Second case में KO will be 0.4 multiplied by 0.08 plus 0.6 multiplied by 0.10. This will be 0.032 plus 0.06. This will be 0.092, that is 9.2%. और सिमिलरली अगर आप इसको यहाँ निकालेंगे तो इट विल बी 8.8%। आप निकाल के देख लीजिए, 0.6 इंटू 0.08 8% है, प्लस 0.4 इंटू 0.10 So this will be 0.048 plus 0.4, तो this will be 0.88, 8.8%. So यहाँ पर अगर आप फॉर्मूला यूज करके V निकालेंगे तो बिकॉज द EBIT वॉज 2 लाख, तो इन दिस केस आप फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल जैसे जैसे लीवरेज बढ़ रही है KO कम होता जा रहा है, 9.6% से कम होके 9.2%, 9.2% से कम होके 8.8%, तो लीवरेज के बढ़ने से KO कम हो गया, ये हमारा पॉइंट जस्टिफाई हो गया। सिमिलरली अगर मैं V निकालूंगा तो फर्स्ट केस में इट विल बी 2 लाख अपॉन 9.6%, सेकेंड केस में इट विल बी 2 lakhs अपॉन 9.2%, एंड थर्ड केस में इट विल बी 2 lakh अपॉन 8.8%। जब आप ये वैल्यूज कैलकुलेटर से निकालेंगे so this will be highest. You can easily have it proven that as the leverage increases, the KO decreases and the value of the firm increases. For your sake, I will just calculate the figure so that there is justification in front. तो 2 lakhs को डिवाइड करूंगा 9.6% से, so the in first case the figure will be 20,83,333. दूसरे केस में 2 lakhs को डिवाइड करूंगा 9.2% से, द वैल्यू विल बी 21,73,913, और लास्ट केस में 2 lakh को डिवाइड करूंगा 8.8% से, द वैल्यू विल बी 22,72,727. So you are clearly seeing यहाँ डेप्ट 2 लाख था, यहाँ डेप्ट 4 लाख था, यहाँ डेप्ट 6 लाख है, यहाँ KO 9.6% है, यहाँ 8.8% है, यहाँ वैल्यू 20 lakhs है, 21 lakhs है, यहाँ दी, तो जैसे हुआ वैल्यू बढ़ गई तो 100% नेट इनकम अप्रोच माउथ टू माउथ, वर्ड टू वर्ड प्रूव हो गई. So we can always close the